Urban explorers, what is the creepiest we're not alone experiences you've had? If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment for more videos like this. My group and I are urban explorers and ghost hunters, so I guess we go looking for this stuff. But one of the freakiest moments I've had recently was when I was setting up my camera for a group picture at an abandoned senior center. Including myself, there was 4 of us. I was behind my camera with a tripod taking test photos, playing with my settings before we took the group photo. Everything seemed fine, I got everything set up and we took some nice photos. However, when I went back to upload all of the photos, I noticed something weird. In the mix of my photos of when I was taking the test shots of my 3 friends, I locked in on one picture. Behind my friend, running in the background, is this black shadow/figure. It was basically sprinting behind all of them while I was taking these photos. I usually check most of my photos after I take them, but I never noticed it. I chase ghosts, and I know when to be a skeptic, but in my 4 years of taking photos, I've never captured anything like this. I have the photo if anyone would like to see and give me your opinion of WTF this could be. When I was a kid, I was at my friend's house and we were playing video games. I was probably around 10 that time. But we were hanging out and I realized it was dark and late, maybe close to 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. So I decided to bike home cause my house wasn't too far from his, maybe 3 to 4 blocks. But as I went home, there was this long curve going downhill and my house would be there at the corner and there would be woods on the other side of the road. As I was cruising down the hill, I heard something from the side, like something in the bushes, and could hear the trees moving. There's street lights too, so it wasn't a dark, but all of a sudden there were so many deers that came out of the woods, like that Jurassic Park movie where all the dinosaurs started running away. As I was cruising downhill, I felt like everything was in slow motion. I suddenly stopped and was scared, hoping the deers don't run me over. But none of them did. I was shocked at how many deer there was and at the same time amazed how I wasn't hurt. But I came to my sense and thought, why did that happen? As if they were getting chased by something big. Then again I heard something from the woods, look over and saw nothing but the leaves on the trees cause it was still dark with the street lights. I was close to home at that time and just went home and told nobody cause it felt like I couldn't. But till this day I still don't know why I experienced that moment and how I was lucky not to get run over by a pack of running deers, but I know I definitely wasn't alone when I was starting at the woods. These are my stories my dad told me, but my dad is a realtor and will sometimes have to appraise houses that were foreclosed on. The tenant will sometimes, as a fuck you to the bank, either trash the house, or leave their belongings behind. So the first story was when he walked into the house, it smelled absolutely rancid. While investigating the source of the smell, he opened the door to the garage and was face to face with a person. He felt for the light switch, couldn't find one, and was too petrified to move. His eyes finally adjusted to the darkness to make out the shape of a fucking mannequin that someone had propped up in front of the door to scare the shit out of. The smell ended up being a dead snake in the sink, which is also pretty fucked. This one is pretty creepy. He was walking another foreclosure property that someone had put tons of mirrors in the house. Additionally, they had demolished the old stairs and replaced them with a spiral staircase. He told me this had something to do with ghosts or demons unable to enter spiral stairs, and he said overall it was just very unsettling. He went outside to check out the shed, and when he opened the shed he was hit with the smell of rotting animal. There was a shrine of small dead animals, arranged in a circle, with the head of a decaying dog skull in the middle. There were weird shapes drawn along the walls, and he called 911 because of how ghastly the scene was. He doesn't like talking about that one. Not urban but rural. Back in 2013 when I was 14, my boyfriend at the time and I decided to walk the woods near my parents' place. Now mind you, I had been walking these woods with various friends for an entire year at this point. The opening of a clearly made trail came from the street, and after the first mile you came to a big circle clearing. We'd seen old campfires there before and even walked all of it to the point it led us to another neighborhood. This time was different. A few walks prior another friend and I had spotted a tent. We never dared go close to it because it wasn't there the previous year. Now, my boyfriend and I are walking and we realize this tent is in shambles. Completely tore up, but still standing. This already gave me the creeps and the entire time it felt like someone else was there with us. Of course, as a 15-year-old boy my boyfriend had to be brave. So we continue to walk down the path and I have no good feeling about this walk. He decided to get off the path a little bit and go towards some running water we hear. It's downhill a bit, completely covered in leaves where I lose my footing. I fall and as I go to get up, I shit you not, human skeletal remains are right beside me. I absolutely freak out and call my boyfriend over and he instantly gets pale. Now mind you, both of us completely freaked out, took a quick set of photos, for the police later, and ran the entire 3 miles at this point, back to the main road, down that road, and all the way to my parents' house. We knew we'd probably be in trouble, but I'm freaking out and trying to tell my parents what happened through a shaken up voice. They seriously didn't believe us, even after photos, but we begged them to call the police. Police came, we had to walk them all 3 miles back to the skeleton and send in all our photos. Turns out it was a man from a neighboring town about 30 minutes away, reported missing from 2011 by his sister. Poor 14-year-old me had nightmares for a good month and I've never returned. Nothing else was made of it. There is an abandoned youth centre in Kent, UK that has been there since 1917. It's just off of an estate block, by some apartments, not very secluded. The place was pretty creepy as there was an open barn-like shed which had cut down ropes and nooses hung up all on the ceiling. We entered the building and didn't spend very long there. There was a main stage area and big hall floor space with an upstairs room you could get to on a ladder. There used to be external access, but the iron door was sealed shut like most the doors here. We went up there and found a couch and thought we would chill there for a bit. We heard a loud bang and me, being the bravest of the two, poked my head round to see a man walking in fast-paced. We slammed the door shut and pushed the couch up against it. He was banging on the door with some kind of metal clunky object, yelling at us to come out. This went on for around 5 minutes, but it felt like forever. We were terrified. The next thing you know, we hear the item drop and him leave. I looked my cousin dead in the eyes and said he's going to try the other door. We sprinted out of there and hopped the fence as quickly as we could and never returned to the place or saw the man again. I live with the Teton Mountains out my backyard. It's pretty black out at night, no streetlights, can see the stars very clearly. One night, boyfriend comes running to the living room and straight on through to the backyard deck, screaming for his mom and I to follow him. All 3 of us go out and look up to see what looks like a Chinese lantern on fire, but moving in far too straight of a line, bobbing up and down, to be one. You could see what looked like a glowing orb of flames, little tips of flames like whipping around inside it, and it was sort of meandering in a straight line across the mountain horizon. And it was well within our atmosphere, in front of the mountain range, just about a mile away. While all of us staring at it, jaws dropped and dogs running amok in the backyard, it gets to the southwest corner of the house where it is about to be out of sight from the roof, and it freezes position and just hovers there. Then, it rotates, still glowing, and all 3 of us felt in that moment like it noticed us. I immediately got extremely uncomfortable and desperately tried gathering my dogs inside. I felt like it was looking at us, and it was definitely not from this planet. Then, it shot off into space, straight up, faster than anything I've ever seen. This story makes me sound like I have a tinfoil hat on, I don't, but it still flabbergasts me to this day. In my hometown there is a clearing in the woods with a small village. The houses are really spread and one house has been abandoned for years. My father told me that once there was a family living there. But the wife left with the kids because her husband was a drunk. During the winter the husband starved to death. The village is far away from the next town and there is a lot of snow in the winter. Being a stupid teenager, me and my friends decided to explore the house. We stole some tools and left. 2 or 3 years later I decided to check out the house again. I hiked to the village. Because I was a less stupid teen by then, I decided it would be best to not be seen. So I approached the house from the woods through the backyard. I did not want to be seen on the main road. The small road from the main road to the house was almost gone and grass was growing out of it. I circled the house and it seemed that the house was still abandoned. And there were no tracks in the grass on the road. I got near the house and looked for the door that we entered last time. This time, however, the door was locked. I walked in around and looked for another way, and when I saw smoke. Not from the house, but from the backyard. I went to discover the source of the smoke only to find several kids' toys on a pile on the ground. Someone had set them on fire. A few minutes ago I approached the house through the backyard and did not notice smoke or the toys. I ran away and I've not been at this place since. There was an old state mental hospital in the woods that we'd take girls to scare the shit out of all the time. Security was on point though, so you had to time their rounds and there were only a couple spots to get in. On the opposite side of the parking lot there were hedges you could watch from and time your entry, so we'd wait there for a bit to get the feel for it. There were plenty of times we called it off and bailed without trying to get in. One time we made it in and were roaming the halls checking out old rooms in the cafeteria and shit when we started hearing sound from random areas. Ticking, shuffling, scraping, etc. really faint. It sounded like animals crawling through vents. We wanted to find the source, so we left the room we were in and walked into a long hallway and could see really faint lights at the end of the hall. It looked like flashlights, but there were no beams of light, Just circles of light a couple feet off the floor like kids holding them or something. Friend kinda whisper yelled hey and no response and no change, they just stayed there for a minute or so and faded away. We left and were like WTF. They tore the hospital down and built a neighborhood on the 100-acre or so property. No freckin' way I'd buy one of the houses there. They filmed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest there. Walking past an abandoned factory, out for a run, really needed to go to the bathroom and thought this would be a great place to take a piss. After taking the aforementioned, noticed some really nice graffiti artwork deeper inside this abandoned factory, so I decided to venture inside. The moment I headed for the front doors, my spidey senses started tingling, my body telling me this isn't a good idea, you know, just that feeling in your gut that tells you to stop. Anyways, I notice around front door there's lots of broken glass. Since this wasn't my first rodeo, I knew the glass was there as a warning to the people inside that somebody was approaching. I stood for maybe 4 to 5 seconds contemplating going inside when 3 burly guys stepped from around the door asking what the fuck I thought I was doing. I explained I was there to see the artwork, as I couldn't think of any other excuses. They tried to put their hand on my shoulders and guide me inside with telling me there was better stuff deeper into the factory. Stuff I would really like. By now my senses were on fire and I just wanted to nope the fuck out of there. They were so persistent to the point I thought shit, they don't want me to leave. One then pointed to an abandoned room, something which looked like a scene from Saw, including an old office chair in the center of the room. I politely made my excuses and headed for the broken fence in which I entered, expecting these guys to back off, but that only encouraged them to come more into my personal space and escort me to the road outside, telling me numerous times I'm missing out. I still don't know what these guys were planning, perhaps they were genuine, but damn, they gave off some pretty bad vibes to the point of wow, that was kinda messed up. All in all, 3/10 would do again. Explored an old makeup factory with cages in the basement for animal testing. Place was beaten to hell, half of it fallen apart. No access to the upstairs due to every staircase either being non-existent due to water damage or a flat-out suicide mission. As my buddy and I find another dead end, can't get upstairs, we hear someone running above us, towards the dead end. My buddy flipped his knife out ready for some psychopath to just hurl themselves down what basically was a straight drop to the first floor, but they suddenly just stopped. Got the heck out of there. Another time at an old hospital I was checking out with a different friend was all sorts of crazy with hidden rooms and a patio on the roof that can only be accessed by an elevator, which of course was empty, or by going up to like a tower, crawling out the tower window and across the roof. Well anyway, I heard somebody in a bedroom, jumping on the mattress, knocking things over, making a ruckus, and saw like a humanoid shadow kinda on the wall and walk away out of my view. And that's when I was like, oh, it's my friend, and walked in, no one was there. I've been reading a few and I feel like I should share. I was exploring an abandoned school near some woods with my buddy. All was going just fine, had seen a few things and there was even a red smear. OFC, this was our like 3rd time or so and we thought this was gonna be a normal thing. This is where shit hit the fan though. We heard some footsteps from above us, but it was faint so we just thought it was our echo. It was 5 or 6 stories tall. Anyway, we go up to the 4th story when we both stopped for some reason and we heard breathing. Oh. Fuck. I had a pocket knife on me so I brought it out and the small click echoed through the hall and we didn't hear breathing anymore. How probably our echoes, that seemed casual at this point. We go a few steps forward until we hear breathing again, but it was closer. This is when my dumbass said something along the lines of I know how to defend myself. The dark room near us had footsteps coming from it with the breathing again. Yeah, we booked it out of there after seeing a good sized figure, maybe a bit taller than me, but I don't really know because we saw it and ran immediately. The footsteps didn't follow, but my buddy reminded me about the red splat as we ran and we picked up the pace until we were out of there and halfway to our car. I ran around in college with a group that explored abandoned buildings, steam tunnels, and other out-of-the-way places. I have 2 stories for you. I'll post the first one now, the other later. We were in a steam tunnel underneath the University of Oregon. For the past 2.5 hours, we had been making our way slowly from where we entered to an exit that was just a little exposed. We had one guy in the group who we nicknamed Sneakers because he was good at getting around quietly. He was bold as brass, seemingly unafraid of anything. He generally ran point to make sure we didn't run into any surprises. Sneakers had been gone for about a half hour when we saw him reappear just ahead of us with a terrified expression on his face. He quickly pulled the group leader aside and carried on a whispered conversation with him, face white as a sheet. The group leader suddenly started laughing and Sneakers hit him hard in the arm and shushed him. The leader glared at him but quickly turned to the rest of us and told us to wait, then they both disappeared down the tunnel. The rest of us, of course, Had all kinds of guesses as to what was going on, but nobody guessed that the two of them would come running back to us, white as a sheet. Sneakers was actually hyperventilating, and the group leader was pale and sweating. We went back the way we came, but there weren't any explanations given until we were about an hour down the tunnel. Apparently there was a weird sound coming from behind a bunch of pipes. Sneakers went to investigate, and there was a guy on some sort of substance, slowly rocking back and forth and crooning at nothing, while waving a gun around. When the two of them went back to see that Sneakers wasn't making it all up, the guy had moved toward us and was waiting in the middle of the tunnel. Not really urban exploration, but when I was younger I went with two of my friends to hang out after school at a small playground surrounded by apartment buildings on all sides. It was close to New Year's Eve, so it was already dark and the playground was only dimly lit, but still very quiet, which we found kinda relaxing. We brought some firecrackers and after a while we decided to throw a couple. At that point I thought I heard footsteps behind us, but when I looked there was no one there. I asked my friends if they heard anything, to which they replied no, so I brushed it off. We each threw a firecracker when suddenly one of my friends started booking it. We thought it was because one of the residents saw us, so we quickly followed behind him. I turned my head to look, but I couldn't see anyone. We ran until we got out of the playground area. After we stopped I asked my friend why did he run, to which he responded, "Did you not notice her?" I asked who. "Did someone see us?" "No. There was literally a woman standing right next to you." "How did you not see her?" I didn't believe him at first. I thought he must have seen something else in the dim playground light, as there was no way I wouldn't notice someone standing right beside me. We went back not thinking much of it and, of course, no one was there. After we continued talking, I noticed an outline of a person standing in front of one of the apartment windows. They were motionless, which I found odd. My friend noticed I was looking at something and then he went pale. When I asked him what's wrong, he looked at me and replied, "That's the woman I saw right next to you, up." When we looked back at the window, she was gone. We left immediately. We did go there again from time to time, even during night, but nothing like that happened ever since. Needless to say, we were all visibly shaken. To this day I still wonder what exactly happened. When I went to the IT school, we went on a 3-day trip together as one class. And on the second day we went to the woods where our teacher set up some radio stations with Morse code and we had to find them. It was a cool thing and made fun, which we didn't thought first. So we were in the woods on a Thursday and searched for the stations. We walked on a small way and then suddenly a guy in full army clothes, "I live in Germany BTW, a gas mask and a fucking machine gun, all guns are forbidden in Germany," stands there on the way and looks deadly in our eyes and grabs his weapon. We backed the fuck slowly out there. He just stood there, ready to shoot at us. There were no more people in the woods. IDK what the hell he did there. Mine's suburban, but here goes. I used to live near a park which mostly consisted of open grass. There were 2 play areas towards one side, but the rest was a mile-long walking trail, the grass within, and an exercise machine here and there. There was also a somewhat large lake. Following the trail, there were a few dirt offshoots as you got close to the lake, but most just ended at the lake itself. However, there was this one path that kept going and going and going. So one day I tried to see what was on the other end of it. It was the most unnerving thing to keep walking farther and farther away and hear the foul noises and children's playful shrieks become dead silence. Most of this mud path was set in a vast expanse of tall grass, too, with a distant tree line around it. And it just kept going. I don't think I've felt more watched. Sometimes reading the occasional spooky shit at ungodly night hours will give me a similar feeling, but being outdoors in the open with the trees lurking at the edges made me feel a special kind of vulnerable. I was taking into account the possibility of human threats as well at this point. When I saw dog footprints, I figured that meant there were dog owners, which meant I couldn't have been the only person using the path. Being so far from any other person and potential help put me on edge already, so I just turned back. There was no relief like the kind I felt when I could hear the children again. That all being said, I'm curious, so before I leave for good, I might head back there and see about getting to the end this time. Here's my story. Every year, my extended family gets together, rents a cabin by a lake for a week, and has a good time. This one year, we couldn't get our regular spot, so we rented a different cabin and lake. On this lake was an island that had one old house on it. You could see it was abandoned, empty windows, broken siding, weather damage, the whole shebang. It also had this very cool and very creepy area that curved into a cove, with a dilapidated bridge that used to bar it from the rest of the water. Anyway, my auntie, who was in college at that time, took middle school me out into a boat, and we went to go land in this cove and explore. There was a newer fence put around the island, but I was tiny enough that I could scoot under where a hole was. We weren't near the house at all, we just wanted to see this area that had a freaky garden. I was having a great time, admiring all the overgrown stuff and reading this weathered sign that said something about a Garden of Eden, when me and my aunt, who is still in the boat, hear footsteps. Turning down a long pathway towards the abandoned house, I see a security guy, like full-blown attire with the police belt and stocky build. He sees me, tenses, says something into the walkie on his shoulder, and sprints at me. And me, being a middle schooler whose worst crime was jaywalking, crawled back under the fence so fast I scrapped my back. My auntie ushered me into the boat, and we paddled away without looking back. We heard the guy stop at the spot, curse, and after hearing a loud thump, I turned and saw he had thrown a huge log over the hole. I've never been back since, but dang if I still wish I knew what that was all about. Roughly 5 years ago, I was on holiday in Australia with a large group of other teenagers. The venue was held on the most beautiful tropical island straight from any travel agency advertisement: white beaches, palm trees, blue waters. If you imagine the perfect tropical island, you will get the picture. We arrived by boat early in the morning, and we were mostly free to do as we pleased, bar one thing: do not enter the abandoned hotel resort on the island, because it could be unsafe. Of course, after telling a 16-year-old specifically not to do something, it was that very night that I pulled some of my close friends away from the campfire to check out this resort. The story behind its abandonment was that it had become too expensive to ship building materials to this remote location, and the resort quickly declared bankruptcy after opening. This enticed me, and thus while the camp counselors were looking the other way, me and 5 of my friends headed out along the beach and into the jungle to find this resort. Now, we're all between the ages of 15 to 17, so of course, we made sure to horrify each other with scary stories of whatever sinister things we might find. Dead bodies, satanic rituals, cannibals, who knew? The eerie setting of the dense jungle, as well as the distance between us and the friendly campfire, added to the atmosphere. We also weren't particularly prepared for such an endeavor, we left spontaneously. Thus, we only had 2 torches to use between the 6 of us. When we arrived at the fence, the scene before us was straight from a post-apocalyptic film. Debris was strewn around everywhere, and nature had reclaimed much of the rooms and hallways we came across. The once glorious pool was now a muddy, reptile-infested hole half filled with rotting palm leaves. The marble tiles were cracked, and the air inside still retained the warmth of the daytime, creating a clam and oppressive feeling. The dark hallways trailing off left and right might as well have been infinitely long chasms, with broken doors on either side that once led to cozy and luxurious rooms. Since we only had 2 torches, we never were able to always look in every direction, meaning that we became increasingly lost in this maze of shattered glass and faulty electricity cables. However, up to this point, we hadn't discovered anything too unusual. The setting was absolutely stunning, trees growing within the foyer where once a chandelier had hung, but there was nothing inexplicable. That was until I discovered some food wrappings on the floor, something that definitely didn't belong in this hotel. Somebody had brought them in. Of course, this doesn't mean anything. We were probably not the first explorers to come here. However, our worries intensified when we found a bag that did not just contain food wrappers, it also contained food itself, Coke bottles, candy, fruit, and it was still fresh. We suddenly became acutely aware that somebody had come here recently, or was maybe even still here. It was at this point that we turned around and had to prepare for another shock. Next to the door through which we had come into the room, we saw a mattress. Upon this mattress were a sleeping bag, a pair of shoes, clothing, and several other belongings. We had unknowingly walked straight into the living room of this hotel's most recent resident. Somebody that could be anywhere in this maze, and with unknown intentions. The only logical thing we could do was, of course, to drop everything and sprint out of this resort. When we came to the fence, I was in such a rush to climb over it that I dropped one of my slippers. I didn't go back for it. This was my very first time urban exploring, and it's a hobby that I'm still into. I have too. This summer my friend and I went fishing as we do. We went to a park in kinda populated area but very isolated. We were fishing on an island. The park is called Islands of Peace Park. We weren't catching shit, so we wander off casting wherever. My friend went one way and I went the other. He stumbled across one of the weirdest scenes I have ever seen. There were clothes and belongings everywhere. An empty jewelry box, sunglasses, toiletries, pregnancy tests, shoes, underwear, and a faded and burnt picture of a black woman holding a little kid. If I had to guess, there was a little girl, and her parents out there, or at least their stuff. About 100 feet away in some bushes there were 4 bags. A large suitcase, a My Little Pony backpack or something, a bag you would see at Aldi's, and a black zip-up bag. My friend peer pressured me into opening the black bag, and inside there was a breast pump. We heard someone yelling, so we ran, but it was just an old guy calling his dog back. I recorded some of this. Across the street from my friend's neighborhood there was a small nature preserve used for science and stuff. This is not a rural area, it is peak suburbia. We would go mess around in there a lot, as you do as 12-year-olds. We kept going farther and farther in as time went on, and eventually we found what, looking back on, is much scarier now. There were 2 small tents pitched with clothes and bedding thrown about everywhere. There was a tiny grill, cooking shit and all sorts of stuff. It was basically a campsite, but permanent. The only odd things were dozen 10-foot-tall crosses circling the campsite. They were covered in black fabric, which I can best describe as the stuff that's stapled underneath, not the mattress but the thing underneath the mattress. We didn't touch anything because I begged them like a bitch not to. We came back the next day and all that was left were the crosses. As teenagers we would go to this abandoned mega church called Living Enrichment Center. Because it was creepy, abandoned, and it was something to do in Oregon as a minor on a weekend night. To be honest, it was always pretty eerie. Things that were scary there: squatters, massive mural of Satan in the Grand Hall. Empty pool with a bunch of old children's toys in the deep end. It was private property and police would almost always come if you used flashlights/phones. The entrance to the maintenance tunnels that used to lead to the old insane asylum. And last but not least, 2 padded rooms in a remote/difficult to access part of the building. Yes, padded rooms in the church, not the mental hospital. One night I decided to take a few girls with me, but instructed my buddies to get there 30 minutes earlier to give us all a good scare, wear masks, laugh in the dark, chase us, etc. It sounded like a harmless idea at the time. So after sneaking our way in, and wandering around the entrance, in complete darkness, we get to the giant mural of Satan, and there are about 50 lit candles underneath the mural. Naturally all the girls freaked out and wanted to leave. Even I was a bit creeped out, but I knew it was just my friends. I went up to show them the padded rooms, cause like, why did this church need/have padded rooms? We climb up to where they were, and there was about 4 sleeping bags in each room, and there was a cigarette still smoking on the ground next to them. I told the girls we had to leave immediately, unsure if this was a part of my buddy's plan or not. On our way out all the candles had been blown out, and we started to hear crying from about 2 or 3 different voices coming from one of the classrooms in the building. We hauled ass back to the car and I called my buddies. Turns out they got too high and didn't want to make the drive that night. I have no idea who was there with us and or what they were doing. Me and a friend were looking to buy some weed. My friend had a reliable dealer that would sell to anyone at any time. This dealer lived in the most dangerous area of town. One might say it was the projects. My friend calls him up and the dealer says he's awake and come on over. It's 1 a.m. and I pull up to where he told us to go. We're both naive teens who had never been somewhere like this. Lots of older homes that were ice cream colored, but no lights were on and the street lights were all busted. So it was dark as shit. We're sitting there trying to call the dealer, but he won't answer. Won't respond to text messages, but it showed that he had read them. As we're sitting in my car I think shadows are playing tricks on my mind. I think I can hear running, but it's like a stealthy run, like someone is trying to not be heard too much. I had this feeling of being watched. I imagine it's how an antelope feels right before a pack of lions takes it down. Out of nowhere 2 guys popped up by our windows with pistol drawn. Another pops up in front with a shotgun. My back windows get smashed in and some other guys start taking anything they can. Of course they steal our money we were gonna buy weed with. And as a final fuck you they rip my new stereo out. So if you're looking to buy drugs late at night and you end up in the projects, just keep driving. You may have been set up to be robbed at gunpoint. We were in an abandoned hospital in China and decided to camp out in one of the old short stay units. The beds were pretty clean because they were covered in plastic. I was with 2 other Urbex peeps I met online. Anyways, I had this really freaky dream where I was dipping my feet into a puddle. It felt so real. I woke up and realized my feet felt cold and wet. I figured it was probably a water leak. I pulled out my phone flashlight and shined it into the face of an elderly, naked Chinese guy. He was covered in mud or dirt or something. It became clear he was licking my feet. I was paralyzed with fear, and he just grinned as he tiptoed backwards out of the room. I woke everyone up at that point. They laughed at first and told me it was probably just a nightmare. I told them I couldn't stay anymore and that I was sorry. We all ended up leaving. We walked through this big overgrown parking structure. I swear to God, I could sense someone watching us. When we made it to the exit, my fucking passport was resting against the door handle. Anyways, they still don't believe me. I won't stay the night anywhere when I urbex now. Hiking near my house, there's a long peninsula of land with some abandoned buildings near the end. Fun to walk through the woods, and pretty private as nobody really walks out that far from where the parking lot is since the lot is right next to a popular beach, so that's where everybody else goes. I was looking around one of the buildings, used to be an old grain storage building, and right outside in the sand I found fresh remnants of what looked like a satanic worship session. There was a circle with blown out candles that still had wet wax, and a pentagram drawn in the sand with sticks on each corner of the star, all leaning on each other towards the middle so they all stood up. At the very top where the sticks met, was what looked like pretty fresh blood. Was still glossy and sort of dripping down the side of the sticks. Naturally I was freaked out and looked around for signs of others. There didn't appear to be footprints leading to slash from that circle. I hadn't passed anybody on my way in. It's a narrow peninsula with tall trees so you can see pretty far forward and all the way to either side. I never encountered another person the entire time I was hiking, which was all the way to the end and back. The only way off the peninsula is a hike back to the car, or to swim away, which again would have had prints leading to the water, and miles of swimming until you get to land again. Still can't explain it to this day, and I have only gone back a couple other times and have never seen anything like that since. There's an abandoned house on a main road near where I live that a friend and I decided to visit. It's completely falling apart but otherwise untouched by humans. The back deck is missing all the slats and it's a 10 feet drop onto the bottom patio under it. We tightrope the slats and make it onto a part of it covered in dirt. Feeling safer on it, we continued, slowly, on the dirt with only a foot or two left to go when my friend's foot falls through and I catch him. We continued into the first room after recovering. There was a mid-60s looking fridge half blocking the doorway, so we squeezed through. After making in, I realized this place must have been a doctor's office, or something. There was an eye wash station, sink, lots of filing cabinets and stuff. After looking through the room, which was half open to the outside, and gearing up with respirators, eye-pro, and gloves, we get to the first door. Carefully opening it and leaving it open. We entered the first hall. I was recording this on my phone. After 15 feet there was a tiny and steep staircase that led to the basement. It was pitch black. We didn't enter due to the very creepy, "Watch your step" sign. Continuing down, we enter the front door area right by a staircase to upstairs. About to go up, we notice one small room on the left and we walk up to it. We get to the open entrance to the room and peek in. I noticed a huge hole in the ceiling in the far corner of the room, which continued into a similar hole right under it on the floor. Then we hear something. Up until now we believe we're completely alone, but I hear something and look to the sound and see a black streak. It fucking gobbles and starts running at us. My partner yells that's a turkey as we run and it chases us down the hall. We get down to the end and my partner goes back into the initial room, but without realizing, I run out the broken down wall right ahead, not realizing there was a 10 to 15 feet drop onto some broken glass. Clutching onto the side standing on a 1-inch ledge, I stand there holding on as tightly as I can. The turkey ran right past me and flew away, later realizing, turkey vulture. My partner grabbed my hand and I jumped back onto the platform. We left and didn't come back for a while, until my friend/partner duct taped a GoPro to an RC car on a string, which we drove down the hall and ran into the turkey again. We left again. Coming back for a final time, me and a different buddy went in, on the same route as first. Armed with a filing cabinet drawer we went in, and the turkey ran at us, again. So we tossed the drawer at it, missed and ran. Never been back to that place. Just over a month ago, we went in January because the weather wasn't that bad. My brother, my friend and I went to a very large abandoned factory in my town that's been abandoned since about 1985, and actually some teen died there in 2010 while doing roof jumping with a large group. For background, there's a section of the factory that's renovated and has maybe 3 to 5 workers in it, and they're almost caught us about 3 times, and we've been going since about July 2018. So for this time, it was around 4 p.m., so it was getting dark. Remember, it's January, so we were in an upstairs section of the factory that was kind of isolated with only one escape route, and another route that was essentially a window with a shitty ladder where if you fall, you're gonna fall about 20 feet into some bushes, which was really dangerous. We were talking and looking around when all of a sudden we heard what sounded like the wall falling or something. We all looked at each other like shit. We locked ourselves in one of the rooms, which led to the dangerous route, and none of us really knew what to do. We decided to try to get out because it was starting to get dark. We opened the door and started making our way towards a staircase that led to the way out. We were moving room to room and kept hearing what sounded like footsteps, and we finally got out to the staircase. We got to the exit and we still have no idea if we were hearing, if it was just the wall falling, if we were hearing stuff, or if somebody was actually there. The creepiest moment of my life. A few years ago, my entire sophomore class and I went for a retreat at a friend's relative's estate. We went there on a school bus after classes had ended, prepared burgers for everyone and had a fun time. After lunch, some of my friends decided to go check out the woods around the estate, and I likely would have agreed if it meant exploring nature, but that day I just couldn't for some reason. I stayed to play card games with some other friends, and then after about an hour and a half we decided to go outside again, and wait for the others so we could play Mafia or something like that while some played soccer. Being worried about their delay, I called one of the girls who went into the woods and got no answer. I started freaking out and was gathering some people to go look for them. We were about 5 minutes deep into the forest the way they had gone, until we heard a scream. We were all startled and wanted to both check it out and head back, until the girl and one of the dudes who went in came running towards us. She was crying violently, muttering out words we couldn't make out, and the dude was as confused as us. He told us they had found a cemetery and that suddenly she started screaming and ran towards the path they came from. One of the guys who went with them was still missing, and they didn't know where he was. We took them back to the house and tried to figure out what happened, but the girl was really scared and couldn't say anything while crying and shrieking. A group went back to look for the other kid, this time involving one of the moms who were watching us. They came back with nothing, and people were getting worried. We kept calling him but he didn't answer his phone, to the point where almost everyone went out looking for him. I didn't dare to go back and stayed at the house with the girl and others. She calmed down and told us what she had seen. They lost track of the missing kid early on, and then they got to the cemetery. She didn't want to stay there because she didn't want to bother the spirits, so she stayed near the path while the guy checked out the stuff that was on the other side. When she turned her head around, she saw a figure kneeling towards a gravestone with their hands covering its face. She stood up in order to leave, and as soon as she did so the figure turned around and showed her his face, described as a pale, old man with a smile from one ear to the other. Although I don't know if this part is really true, she yelled and ran towards the guy crying and started heading back to the estate. She claimed to had seen the missing kid just walking around the cemetery when she looked back, with the figure still there looking at her. They then ran as fast as they could until they met us. Half an hour later, the missing kid came back with his entire clothes and face dirty with grass and dirt. He didn't say a word and her mom took him home straight away, but claimed to not remember anything when we then talked to him. I'm not really sure what the girl saw. It was probably a local visiting a deceased relative, but that wouldn't explain her reaction and what happened to the dude that went missing. Still haunts me to this day when I think about it. Like 5 years ago, me and my family moved to another place. The house was pretty big, not huge, but we lived in a small apartment before. Yeah, pretty big. It wasn't an old house like in the movies or something, completely normal. Until things started to happen. Nothing big, but just creepy. One night when we were alone in the house, me and my sister had a fight and she went on the second floor, in her room, just to come back like 15 minutes later, telling me awkwardly to stop. I thought she just wanted attention, so I said a rude what? That scared her more and proceeded to tell me how she went to sleep just to woke up to a child's like laughter coming from the hallway. I thought again she only did this for attention, so I rolled my eyes and went to my room, also on the second floor, next to hers, to stay away from her. I don't know how long I stood in bed when I heard the laughter. It was weak, but not like it was from the distance, just weak, like someone was whispering it. It was coming from my window, again, tall house, this was the second floor, no one could have been there. I was so scared, and didn't want to draw the curtains because I was afraid that if I see whatever was there it would anger it. So I went down to my sister and told her. We spent the night together watching funny videos to calm us and we never heard that laughter again. When we talk about it now she's saying that maybe it wanted us to make up, but I honestly think it just was happy we were fighting. But something from that laughter sounded like a warning. Story 2, other time it was middle of the night and I was awake in my room. I got hungry so I went down to the kitchen and made myself some sandwiches. The house was dark and quiet, everyone sleeping, so I didn't turn on any light and tried to make as little sounds as possible to not wake anyone up. Going back from the kitchen to my room, I almost got to the stairs when I suddenly realized something was millimeters away from me, almost touching each other. And I say realized, I mean I had the feeling it was already there. Not appeared, but somehow I felt that it was always there, I just didn't saw it before and now I could. It was exactly like the silhouette of a man, taller than me, my head was at its shoulders. But I knew it wasn't a real person, as from that close even in the dark you would distinguish some colors from the clothes or so, But this thing was black. Just black. Darker than the dark, if this makes any sense. I didn't felt anything from it, be it bad or good. It had no presence, so it was like it didn't exist. Except it was directly in my way. So for some reason, be it I was scared and didn't want it to know I saw it or to look like I wasn't afraid even though I was shitting my pants, I just started walking again directly into it. I closed my eyes while doing so. Then when I was up the stairs I didn't look black, scared I would see it looking at me. I don't even know if it had eyes or a face, because I was too scared to look up to its head. I felt disgusting when I walked in it, because I knew I was into something I don't know what it is. It gave me chills and I still regret I didn't just went around it, because my stomach still turns in fear and disgust every time I remember.